Unfortunately, we have several problems here. For 100 years, we've used a simple fertilizer known as NPK. We put in 3 nutrients into the soil when we need 60 minerals. We put those 3 nutrients in the soil for maximum yields per ton and bushel per acre. Then, of course, we have to understand that plants cannot manufacture minerals. If they're not in the soil, they're not in the plants. Plants only have minerals in them if they're in the soil. Plants cannot manufacture minerals. Over 90 years at least, we've been deficient in our soils in America, and as a result, our food is deficient, and as a result, the crops, the grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts that are grown there are minerally deficient, and as a result, the animals and people who eat these minerally deficient crops get mineral deficiency diseases, and the only way to prevent and cure them is with mineral supplements.
Yes, I'm a construction worker, and I hurt my back, and he said that my cartilage damage is permanent. Is there anything that can be done?
Well, first of all, how old are you?
I'm 28 years old.
And what do you normally take for fluid replacement when you're working out in construction? What do you drink during the day?
Water, Gatorade.
You don't drink any soft drinks?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because normally construction workers drink a couple of liters of Pepsi a day, right?
Yeah, I can probably put down a liter pretty easy.
And did you take any vitamins or minerals while you were working in construction?
Just recently started.
When you were in construction, prior to the back problems? Nothing. Yeah, a lot of construction workers will tell me, well, Doc, if it ain't in the Pepsi, I don't get it, right? And so you're a perfect candidate for the pig arthritis formula, plus the EFA. You need all 90 essential nutrients, and give up the bad things. Give up the soft drinks and the iced tea and the lemonades, and give up the fried foods and the margarines. And I can just tell you, with your age, you can honestly expect to see some really recognizable results in a very, very short time, 60 to 90 days. And it doesn't matter what the doctor said. If you do the right things, get rid of the bad stuff, take all 90 essential nutrients, making sure you get that collagen and the glucosamine sulfate and the chondroitin sulfate, you will repair your vertebrae, you will repair the cartilage, and you will repair the disc.
Dr. Wallach, it just seems like every week I pick up a newspaper and I see about our young athletes having problems with their bodies falling apart. What can we give our athletes and our children so that they can be healthy and have long lives that we want as well?
That's a great question, because most people believe that exercise is good for you. And that was always a great question. You know, is exercise good for you? Is it necessary for health and longevity? And when you inspect this question, you have to look at professional athletes who spend most of their teenage years and going through university and the semi-pros and the pros training and practicing and doing their events. And if exercise was the factor in living a long, healthful life, athletes should live longer than couch potatoes. But when you look at this critically, couch potatoes in America live to be 75.5, and the average athlete, depending on the sport and their level of competence, live to be 62 to 68, far short of what a couch potato lives to be. And of course, athletes suffer from a great many joint diseases and bone injuries and tendons and ligaments, back, neck, shoulders, ankles, knees, and hips, and have to suffer through an enormous amount of surgeries to deal with this. And athletes develop some 800 different diseases. And what is it? Why is it that athletes don't fare as well as the couch potato? Well, it's simply because athletes sweat more in 5 years than couch potatoes do in 75 years. And when you sweat, you're not just sweating out Gatorade, you're sweating out all 60 essential minerals. And they're called essential minerals because if they're missing for any length of time, you get some horrible degenerative disease, many of which are life-threatening. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out who's more likely to be debilitated or even die of these life-threatening diseases. An athlete who sweats out quarts of sweat during an event or training or practice, or a couch potato who's laying on a couch in an air-conditioned den, switching the channels, yelling, "Honey, bring in the popcorn, I'm changing the channels." And this is very serious because the Center for Disease Control says that as many as 100,000 young athletes under the age of 30, 100,000 each year die suddenly during an event or training or exercise or immediately after an event from cardiomyopathy, heart disease, and ruptured aneurysm. And we know that cardiomyopathy, heart disease is due to a selenium deficiency, and ruptured aneurysms is due to a copper deficiency. So you can begin to put 2 and 2 together. Why does a 10-year-old die of a ruptured aneurysm? Well, he sweat out all of his copper, and you can't get copper from curly French fries and Pepsis. It just doesn't work.
Dr. Wallach, what about arthritis?
Well, arthritis is my favorite disease because it's easy to fix. It's one of the great myths that the medical profession perpetuates, is that you can't build bone mass after the age of 50, 60, 70 years of age. You can only slow down the loss. And the reason why they say that is because they try to rebuild bone mass using plain calcium, whether it's Tums or calcium citrate or carbonate or gluconate or lactate. And your body will not retain much or any of the calcium you supplement with in your bones without first building new bone matrix. You have to have new bone matrix. This is this rubbery collagen material that looks like tendon or skin, and it makes up 25 to 40% of our bone weight, 40% when you're a child and 25% when you're an adult. And so it's absolutely essential if you want to deal with the wear and tear arthritis, osteoarthritis, degenerative arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis effectively. You have to take all 90 essential nutrients, and the best way to do that is with Dr. Wallach's pig arthritis formula. Remember, I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician, and we learned a long time ago, maybe 100 years ago, in veterinary medicine that we could actually prevent and reverse, maybe even use the cure word in animals, arthritis, simply by giving the animal the raw material to develop properly and to maintain and repair the joints. And so using this information that we developed in animals, if you use the same concept for human beings, I have literally seen tens of thousands of people over the years who had bone-to-bone arthritis, they had osteoarthritis, they have degenerative arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, which are basically a joint form of osteoporosis. It's osteoporosis, the joint ends of the bones. And they've tried all kinds of medication. And, of course, if you take medication, if you take a painkiller, if you take an anti-inflammatory for arthritis, essentially all you're doing is cutting the wire to the red warning light. Pain in a joint says, don't use me until you fix me. And by taking a painkiller, by taking an anti-inflammatory, which will reduce pain, you're allowing that joint to be used even though it would have been painful without the drug. And so you're wearing that joint out faster and faster and faster. And to me, it's criminally negligent for someone to be prescribed a painkiller or an anti-inflammatory for joint disease without repairing the joint at the same time. And this is where the pig arthritis formula really shines, and it works just like a charm in human beings.
So does the same apply for bone spurs?
Absolutely. Bone spurs are a manifestation of osteoporosis. A person will get bone spurs and calcium deposits when you have osteoporosis, just the opposite of what a doctor will tell you. And you need more calcium, more magnesium. You need the bone matrix. You need the collagen, the glucosamine sulfate, the chondroitin sulfate. And those bone spurs and the calcium deposits will actually re-architecture back down to a normal bone. It takes a little while. It takes 4 to 6 months to pull that off. But you can do it on a regular basis, absolutely.
Cancer seems to be striking everywhere in our population these days. What do we have that we can help people that are facing the challenge of cancer?
Well, it's a great question. Back at the turn of the century, 1895, 1900, 1 out of 10 Americans developed cancer. Right now, it's 3 out of 5, and by the year 2050, it's projected 2 out of 3 people are going to develop cancer in America. The onset of cancer appears to be directly related to the amount of carcinogens. These are toxic waste either from agriculture or from the industrial waste that we find in our air and our food and our water and in the dust around us. And the lack of the ability to defend against these carcinogens, and the most common defense mechanism that we have, the one that we have access to in a very economical way, are the antioxidants like selenium, like the grapeseed extract, like the green tea. You're looking at vitamin E, vitamin C, beta-carotene, and avoiding fried foods and margarines and things that we have control of, eating as much organically grown food as possible. And according to the medical school at the University of Arizona, and this came out in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, December 25th, 1996. I mean, we're talking about a great Christmas gift to the American people. They did a wonderful study, 10 years. It was a double-blind study, 1,300 people. They gave the study group 250 micrograms, which is 1/4 of 1 milligram. And we're talking an itsy-bitsy amount of selenium. They just used selenium alone. Didn't change anything else. And by giving these people 250 micrograms, 1/4 of a milligram of the trace mineral selenium, they were able to reduce the risk of esophageal cancer by 71%, prostate cancer by 69%, greater than 2/3, colon and rectal cancer by 64%, almost 2/3. Lung cancer was reduced by 48% whether you smoked or not. And in a parallel study from the University of California, San Diego, 250 micrograms, 1/4 of 1 milligram of selenium, the trace mineral selenium, reduced the risk of breast cancer by 50 to 80%. And the same study showed that if you already have cancer, if you take 250 micrograms of selenium every day, you will in fact double the natural history life expectancy of a particular type of cancer. For instance, lung cancer, the natural history is about a year. Brain cancer is less than a year. Uterine, ovarian, colon, breast cancer is 2 to 5 years. Prostate cancer is 5 to 8 years. Well, just by taking 250 micrograms of the trace mineral selenium every day, 1/4 of 1 milligram, according to the University of Arizona's medical school, you can double that life expectancy just by doing that one thing. And so if you take the other antioxidants and give up margarines and fried foods and sugar and caffeine and avoid as many of the agricultural waste and the toxic waste from the industry that you can, you will be able to avoid an enormous amount of cancer. And if you already have cancer, doing other things such as taking the antioxidants and getting on macrobiotic diets and so forth, you can add many healthful years to your life. You can certainly have a better quality of life. And many people will extend their lives in a great way, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And obviously there's no way you can look in somebody's eyes and say, you're the one that's going to live 50 years. And so people just have to do all the right things, and they're going to get the best that can be gotten from nutrition and the supplements.
Dr. Wallach, I've been a diabetic for about 30 years. What kind of minerals should I take to help me?
Okay, well, first of all, are you an adult onset type 2 diabetic or a juvenile onset type 1 diabetic? Juvenile onset type 1. You are insulin dependent because the definition of a juvenile onset type 1 diabetic is that you do not make any insulin, and so you will never be able to wean off of insulin. You will always have to take some insulin. But there are 2 trace minerals, chromium and vanadium, that will make the insulin that you supplement yourself with very efficient. And most people who are juvenile onset type 1 diabetics are able to reduce the amount of insulin they require to stabilize their blood sugar by supplementing with the chromium and vanadium. Normally, a person learns how to adjust their insulin by taking their blood sugar once or twice or 3 times a day. And so you're taught how to adjust your insulin intake. And just by following what you've been taught, as you supplement with this plant-derived colloidal and the chelated chromium and vanadium, you will be able to get down to a new dosage of your insulin. And the value of taking the whole pig arthritis formula is that there's nothing worse than paying attention to your blood sugar levels and your insulin intake and then dying of a ruptured aneurysm because you didn't supplement with copper, or developing cancer because you didn't supplement with selenium. So it's very important, even though you're a diabetic and that is your primary immediate concern, still over the long haul, being a health-conscious person just out of necessity, you're going to have to supplement with all 90 essential nutrients. And the odds are, even though you're a juvenile onset type 1 diabetic, you have every honest expectation of living to be 100 symptom-free if you do everything right.